Hey, good morning. I hope you're having a beautiful day today. Um, it's going to be a great day. There's a lot of things going on in our world right now. And so, why not just take a little bit of time to get into the Bible? And I think today could actually really help us. We're in Matthew chapter 14, and there's a point at the end of this chapter that I believe that we can relate to some of the craziness of today. And so, here we go. Let's get into Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14. Get things kind of situated here. All right. I hope you've been enjoying these morning devotions. Here we go. Verse 1. At the time Herod the Tetrarch heard of the fame of Jesus, he said to his servants, "This is John the Baptist, which was risen from the dead." Now you might be wondering, when did John die? Did we talk about that? We have not talked about it, but it's going to tell us what happened. And therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. For Herod, and here's the story, Herod had laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake. Now this was his brother Philip's wife, but yet Herod was having an affair. For John had said to him, "It's not lawful for you to have her. You can't have her." And when he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude because they counted him, John, as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them. Some say her name is Salome. And it pleased Herod. Wherefore he promised with an oath to give her whatever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, "Give me here John Baptist's head in a charger." Now, a charger is what a server would have, like a silver plate with the top on it. And the king was sorry, nevertheless, for oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded that it be given her. And he sent and beheaded John in prison, and his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. And the damsel came and took up the body and buried it and went and told Jesus. So that's kind of the end of John the Baptist. Herod was kind of at one point beginning to like John the Baptist, didn't really want anything uh, bad to happen. And then, but he made an oath that he would do this thing, and John the Baptist's head was cut off, and his disciples came and took the body of Jesus. Took the body to bury it, went and told Jesus. Now, when Jesus heard it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. Now, if you get bad news, I know if I get bad news, sometimes I just want to go be in a spot by myself. I want to be alone. I want to grieve alone. I'm not an open griever. I'm not one that needs a bunch of people around me. I just want to grieve alone. And when the people had heard it, though, they followed him on foot out of the cities. And when Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, he was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. And when it was evening, his disciples came and said, "This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the villages and buy victuals." But Jesus said to them, "They need not depart. Give ye them to eat." And they said to him, "We have here 5 loaves and 2 fishes." And he said, "Bring them to me." And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass. Now, I want you to think about this. This is actually the first miracle right here, that they sat down on the grass. Because remember, they're in a desert place, and he's commanded them to sit on grass. So it's almost as if he makes grass to grow for them a place to sit. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and he looked to heaven and blessed and brake and gave the loaves to his disciples, and his disciples to the multitude. And when they all ate and were filled, they took up the fragments, the leftovers that remained, 12 baskets full. And they had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. So this is actually one of the stories told in all 4 Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all tell this story. The accusation of being demon possessed in chapter 12, the death of John the Baptist here. is a turning point in Jesus' ministry. He desired to simply devote himself to disciples, and he went to find rest. He quietly left the city by boat, but the crowd, 5,000 plus women and children, perceived his destination, traveled by foot to find him. They arrived before he did. They waited for him. And Jesus was concerned not only with spiritual food, but also physical food. He desired to feed the crowd. John tells the disciples to find food. They scan the crowd, and John records, Jesus tells the disciples to go find food. John records that they found a lad that had 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He had lunch with him. But they asked the question, what are they among so many? Jesus blessed it, broke it, fed them, and with 12 baskets left over. Absolutely amazing miracle. You're going to see another time really soon where Jesus feeds another multitude. This is not the first time that he's going to do this. It says, in a straight way, Jesus constrained his disciples to get in a ship and go before him to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. So he sends out his disciples, he turns to the multitudes and says, it's time for you to go. See, they were wanting to make Jesus king. Jesus is trying to get away from them. And whenever he sent the multitudes away, he went up to a mountain apart to pray. Finally, he's getting that alone time. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with the waves, and the winds were contrary. And in the 4th watch of the night, like if you understand how the Jewish clock worked, this is the probably 9 p.m. to midnight here. 4th watch of the night, Jesus went up and walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled and said, it is a spirit. And they cried out in fear. But Jesus said, be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid. Fear not. And Peter answered and said, Lord, if it's really you, let me come on the water. And Jesus said, come. And when Peter came out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. And whenever he saw the winds boisterous, he was afraid, began to sink, and he said, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him. And he said, O thou of little faith, why did you doubt? Jesus puts his disciples in a ship, sends the multitude away, finds his alone spot to pray. Then the ship is caught in a storm. During the storm, Jesus, however, this time he is not in the boat. But in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went to him, walking on the sea. The disciples were afraid, thought it was a spirit. Jesus, sensing their fear, said, be of good cheer. It is I. Don't be afraid. Peter requests to walk on water. Jesus agrees. Peter could face the storm because Jesus was in his presence. Jesus had commanded him before. He had learned to trust him before. And so now there's a storm. I'm going to trust Jesus again. Peter steps out on the water. He walks on the water to go to Jesus. But he begins to sink when he saw the wind and the conditions around him. Peter began to walk in faith, but the circumstances around him began to get in his emotions and began to get in his mind, and that's what he began to see. And he allowed the present circumstance. You see, obedience to Christ does not remove life's obstacles. Obedience to Christ doesn't move sin from life. It doesn't remove the storms of life. Obedience to Christ does not remove those things. If you look at the conditions of the world today, it may seem like everything is in mass chaos around us, and it can potentially shrink our faith. But rather, we must learn to keep a laser focus on Jesus. If we can keep our laser focus on Jesus, something great can happen. But we have to keep our focus and our faith on Jesus. One thing I love, he didn't say you didn't have faith. He said you just had little faith, because that little bit of faith, even when everything's in turmoil, is what cries out and says, Jesus, help me. Jesus, help me. And when they were coming to the ship, the wind stopped. And they that were in the ship came and worshiped him and said, of a truth, thou art the Son of God. Can you worship while you're wet? Can you worship when you're still covered by the circumstance? And then they were in the ship, and they came and worshipped the truth out the Son of God. And they went and they were gone over. They came to a land of Gennesaret. And when the men of that place had knowledge of him, they sent out into that country round about, and brought unto him all that were diseased, and brought him all that were might only be touched the hem of his garment, and as many as touched were made perfectly whole. So Jesus finds him. It's like anytime Jesus is on land, they find him, and he has compassion, and he just begins to do what he does. He ministers, he heals, because that's what Jesus does. He ministers and he heals. We need worship and we need healing. Keep your eyes on Jesus in worship and be able to touch the hem of his garment. And whenever we do that, there can be wholeness that comes to our lives. We need healing and wholeness in our world today. But keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep your focus on things above and not on things of the earth. There's an old song that says, turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Thanks so much for tuning in to this morning devotion. God bless you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.